Hey everybody, it's Jeff, your CS161 instructor. I want to cover in this video the basically this last learning objective. Okay, and this is I have a separate video that covers the algorithmic piece, right, and going through a sample algorithm document. You'll be able to kind of read through some of these other things and look at the other resources to learn about these other items here. But the main thing for this video here is to cover learning objective number 5. Okay, and so we're gonna go into zybooks here and show you where you can find that. So I go to the lobby and I click zybooks. I sign in, and my screen will look a little different to you than to me because I have all the instructor, everything's unlocked, and I have some additional things down here and so on. But I think generally you should be able to follow what I'm doing here. We'll click on this first section, Introduction to C++. I'll just start at the beginning here. Algorithms. We already talked about this in a different video, so I'm not going to, well, we didn't talk about this specific one, but this is just another example here, right? And so you, at the bottom of the page, you have the shortcut to the next section. This talks about the flowcharts, which I'm not going to go through. Here's another example where we're going to calculate basically, you know, if your age, what your age is, it'll calculate your birth year. Let's talk about the development environment here for a moment. Common terminology, IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. There are lots of IDEs out there for software development. Some are super complicated and do so many things. Others are very, very basic. An IDE also can just be using a text editor and a command line interface and knowing your own directory structure and things like that. Maybe that's not really integrated, but you know, that's a development environment as well. In the introductory video I did for the class, I showed you Replit. Replit is really cool because it's basically a collaborative tool you could use with other students in the class, and if you're struggling with things, you can send me links and things like that. And so Replit's a good option. You could also install Visual Studio, which is more complex. There's also the VSC, which is a more simpler version of Visual Studio, VS Code. I do have VS Code on this computer. I wasn't planning to show it, but let's see what we can do here. Yeah, so here's VS Code. Not super helpful right now because this is actually using device script, different programming language, to connect to an ESP32 microcontroller board. I think maybe in a future session I can show how to create a new project in VS Code that's C++. But this just gives you an idea of what that development environment might look like if you want to use it. Code Blocks is a simple IDE which you can access from the class. But also the zybooks itself has a kind of some built-in development environment, which I'm going to show you here next. We're going to start to write our very, very first program for this class. And those of you that have done Python and CS161 have already kind of gotten past this, obviously. But this is worth a few minutes, you know, kind of lecture topic here, right? Is 3 basic instruction types that all programs, well, most programs have, and then the concept of a variable. Okay, so let's talk about these basics first. Okay, it doesn't matter what kind of software you're running, whether it's on a computer, it's on an embedded device, it's on a mobile device, it's in a data store center, whatever it might be. Programs basically take input, process the input in some way, and then deliver output. All programs do that. Input does not necessarily mean that the user's typing in a number, right? Input could be coming from sensors. It could be coming from data that's already in the system. It could be user input, doesn't have to be. Processing could be as simple as comparing numbers. Checking to see if a file exists would be an example of processing. Error checking on equations, all of those things are process. And then output. Again, the output isn't necessarily to a screen or to a printer. You know, kind of you think about traditional output devices. The output could be sent over the air, you know, Bluetooth or LTE or Wi-Fi, whatever. That's then read by some other device, right? An MQTT message, for example, sent by a ESP32 that has a SIM card in it, for example, right? Actually, I have one. It's not an ESP32, but I can show you, right? Here's an Arduino that's got a SIM module attached to it, and you can see there's the antenna here, right? And this guy basically is reading some mechanical switches and some GPS coordinates and sending that data over cellular to a cloud service. It's a project that I'm working on right now with one of the companies. So some fun stuff, right? But that's an example. The input could be coming through the antenna. So if we take my example here, right? Again, make sure you can see it on the camera, right? The input in this case is the data coming on the antenna, right? The GPS data, and these switches, which right now are just wires. They're not connected to switches. Those are inputs as well. What's happening, the board is doing, is it's checking it reads the GPS coordinates. If they've changed, then, so the process has the GPS coordinates changed, yes or no? And then if so, the output is send it back over, there's your SIM card right there. Send it back over the LTE to the cloud that's looking for that message. Okay, and so that's just an example of using these 3 steps. Okay, one thing that's really cool about this online book is it basically gives you built-in exercises here, right? And so in some of these cases you can enter things and try things. In other cases it's just an animation, right? So you can see here, you know, what's happening here. The input is assigned to a variable called X. A variable is just a symbolic name for a location in memory. Okay, so whether it's a numeric input or a string or a GPS coordinate, whatever it might be, the word variable is just, it describes a location for data using a symbolic name. You know, in this case, X. Okay, so then I read the next input. So the user types in 5. Next step is I am going to do a transformation, which in this case is I'm adding X plus Y, storing that value in a third variable called Z, which is 7. And I click on that one more time, and I'll get 7 on the screen. Okay, so by the end of this first to second week, you should be able to write this program in C++, right? If you can't do it already. Some of you can do this stuff in Java, JavaScript, Python already. Maybe C++, right? So that's where we're all going to get to here. So check. You'll see this check gets done on your participation activity. Okay. And so you can continue to do these types of interactive participation activities. I think they're great here. Okay. So now what I want to do is I'm going to keep going. No, I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to this first lab. And you can see there's 2 labs here around formatting output. Hello world and a no parking sign. What we're going to do is we're going to use this one, but then we're going to add some input to it, right? So that you can kind of see what as you try to go through this here. Just like I showed in the intro for Replit, this is a basic development environment right here. So I can type my code. Real quick tangent here. In C++, there are two types of comment formats. You could put stuff inside the / asterisk construct is a block comment. All of this is a comment, right? Everything inside here, even stuff that looks like code, right? All of this is inside a comment. Okay, this is what's called a comment block. It starts with a / asterisk and ends with an asterisk, / asterisk and ends with an asterisk /. Okay. Your other type of comment structure is just simply using a /. Something like that. Now what I like to do is I like to have a block comment that describes what this next section of code does. Prints a message. And I do something like that. So now we're going to use the cout, which stands for console out. The double angle bracket says I'm going to send what's to the right of the double angle bracket to the console. This is very fiddly, but we're not going to go into the details of why it's cout and why it's like this. This is just, these are rules of this language, right? So here's my message. Different than Python, C++ uses semicolons to note the end of statements. Okay. Also different from Python, your default function in a CPP file, which is C++, is going to be a main function. And so your program is going to have this include stuff, your int main, and you're going to put your stuff in here. So now I'm going to run this. Takes a moment here. And why didn't it print? There it is. I must have clicked clear there. So it says, here's my message. Now notice that the cursor is right to the immediate right of that. You want to get in the habit of your messages always moving you to the next line. And so to do that, we just use another angle, because we could do something like this here, right? I can split up my things that my different parameters that I'm sending to cout. So if I run this again, now you could see I'm on the next line right here. Okay, so if you got something to send to me, this is what you'll do. You'll submit this, and there'll be some other details here, with submissions here. But this is a simple example of doing some formatting of output. All right, let's see if we can find. So here's a video that talks about input and output. This is also another example. This is an example that's doing some calculation. Okay. There's that same program. Okay, here's what I wanted to show you next. We're talking about input. Now, cout is a way to print things to the screen. cin is a way to get console data in from the user and put into a variable. Now, I may have skipped it here, but I didn't see an example of cin, so we're going to start here with this quiz. Which of these is right? Okay, the first one is not right because numcars is inside double quotes. That's not a variable name. That's what's called a literal here. So then your next question is, okay, which of these directions? Since we're going to put data from the console into the variable, we want to go with this example. And so we could see that I was told that that's correct. If I change that, it's going to tell me why it's not. Okay, so now we're going to combine all this together, and I'm going to jump to Replit so that I can just show you that as well, right? And so I'm going to create a C++ Replit. And what I love about Replit is it picks random names that are combining a bunch of different words here. All right, so we are going to change our program to get in two numbers and add them together. So we're going to say cout, enter first number. Now, this example is using this \n. \n is the same as ENDL or endline. I would say that it's more common in C++ that ENDL is used. You can use either, just be consistent. But now what I'm going to do is say A is set to so if this works, I'm going to enter a number, and then it's going to echo that number back to me. Let's try that. Okay. Where's my problem? Is it because I don't have the standard out? Was that what it was? Let's see. It doesn't like that. Oh, I know why. I'll come back to that. It's an exercise for you to think about. Why do I have to put this stuff there? Okay, so now if you look down here, I'm getting a couple more errors. It's saying I have an unused variable X and an unused variable B. That's not really an error. It's more of a warning. It's like, who cares? But for now, let's take those out. Now it says enter my first number. I enter 99 and it tells me that. Okay, so it doesn't matter how experienced of a programmer you are. You're gonna there's gonna be these little silly things that are happen all the time if you're switching between development environments and languages. My challenge is that I'm doing stuff in C++ on embedded devices, C++ out here for this class, Python for CS260, and so on. So you're gonna see me make those mental mistakes quite a bit, actually. If we go back to so if you go back and look at these examples, inside this development environment, we just said cout by itself. But here in Replit, I had to put std : and that's because I'm missing this command here, which is basically telling me that functions that run on the standard input-output, that's what std means, don't need to be explicitly called out that way. So I add that. Now when I run my program, it still works, right? But now I should be able to remove those, and it still works. Okay, the other thing that I said earlier, remember I said that you almost always want to have an end line, or a ENDL. See, now ENDL should still work too. Click. ENDL, cout, cn, all are part of this namespace. Okay, so remember how I said you always want to end your program with an ENDL so that, you know, your couts there is not like you're going to the next line. In this case, I left it off on purpose of this cout because that allows the number to be entered right on the line. This is a very well-formed prompt, right? It tells me what to enter. If it has a question mark or a colon or a dash or something, it has a space after that, right? So that this is, from a user experience perspective, this is very clear. Okay, so now let's do this. And I think what I'll do is I'll put the end line here to show you the difference. Now I need my second variable here. So I enter my first number, and now you can see my prompt for my second number has me on the next line. This is going to be a preference in most cases. If you do it this way, I'm going to grumble about it because you're not being consistent. But if you do it the same way every time, unless I explicitly say this way in the style guide, it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to fix that. Now we're gonna, we'll use sum. And say sum is equal to A plus B. And now let's just do this. Let's just print out sum first by itself. Okay, so I enter 10 and I enter 20 and I get 30. Now, what do I not like about this example? I'm printing out a result. To the user, if they don't know what the program's doing, they may not recognize that this number is the sum of these two numbers. We all know 10 plus 20 is equal to 30, but if these are like really long numbers or fractional numbers or whatever, then this is not telling us what my program is doing. So let's change that. Do something like that. So now it tells me the sum of A and B is, but we can get even fancier. Let's see if that works. So now it actually shows me all my operands used and my results. I can make that an equation instead. I can use the plus sign and the equal sign, right, if I want to. But this is your basic demonstration of input and output. You should be equipped now to walk through that learning objective, generate your version of this, you know, doing something as simple as this or something a little bit fancier if you want. And as always, questions, post them on the discussion forum.